This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I am your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the amazing C.R. Rice. And our guest today is Deborah Hawkins. Woo! Woo! Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking first. So I am drinking some more of the Sweet 45 cherry cordial that was sent by our sponsor, which is Skunk Brothers Spirits. You guys log on to there, put DWA10, you get a 10% discount, and it's kind of amazing, and I would try all of their things. They have new stuff coming out all the time. CR, what are you drinking?
I am still on my vodka green tea kick.
I'm telling you, we should just bottle that crap and market it. It's amazing.
I really should. I've been slowly trying to perfect it. Like Corey got some actual green tea. So like I tried it with like actual green tea. Not the same. Not the same. Like where you have to steep it and everything. It is it's a little different.
I believe that. I believe that completely. Okay, Deborah, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a rye Manhattan. So I like either Templeton or High West, which is small batch rye, and a little bit of sweet vermouth and brandied cherry.
Wow.
That's fancy.
That's fancy. You're way more fancy. I'm drinking out of a Drinking with Authors solo cup, and I'm just excited that I'm in my Airbnb that has crushed ice. It's these little goals in life one has to have. Okay, so Deborah, tell us about what you write for those listening that may not have heard of you before.
Sure. I've been blogging on gratitude and mindfulness since 2010. And basically, I started a practice of writing short, maybe 800, 900 word reflections on things that lifted my mood. And I started this to create a more positive outlook to life. I was at a very dark period in my life when I did this. And I found that focusing on gratitude really lifted my spirits. I was also a writer who wasn't writing. And just having this small little goal of writing these little reflections down also tended to lift my spirits. So I did this for a while, and then I started reading them, and I realized I wrote about some of the same themes, like a handful of themes. And now I was equipped to look at the world, and I knew what to look for, what would make me feel better, what would lift my spirits. So I call this now intentional gratitude, and definitely I will be surprised. Something will just come over me that I think this needs to be reflected on. But sometimes I will just look at a situation and think about what my themes are and start noticing things in the actual situation that brings up my spirits. So it's been like a spiritual practice and a writing practice too.
Very cool. That's awesome. So when did you first publish the book?
I published at the end of 2019. And shortly after, I had like thoughts about like making some appearances, and then came COVID and things changed. So I was delayed a little bit. I did start up recently with some book blogger tours. I know Stephanie is helping me with the current one I'm doing, and I've done some other things. I also teach a class called Helium for Your Heart, Elevate Your Outlook with Intentional Gratitude. I do this as a Zoom-enabled course to a 2-session class to teach people a different way to kind of control their own mood and feel brighter.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. So you started writing a long time ago. Have you been writing most of your life, or was that just a few years ago. Where did writing start for you?
I've been writing since I was, or making up stories, let's say, since I was a child. My one of the first stories I actually made up was about, it was a creation story. It was like an assignment in second or third grade. And we had to write about why something came to be the way it was. So I wrote a story about how the toucan got his colorful beak. So basically he was bragging and all the other animals in the jungle threw fruit at him, tropical fruit at him. And that left marks. So he had a colorful nose, a beak. So I love making things up, and I've done that all my life. And it's kind of funny that I always aspired to be a writer, but I thought I would write from my imagination, like make up stories. And then when I was in this place and realized the power of just journaling and really contemplating something, what I'm actually putting out in the world is nonfiction. It's like creative nonfiction. It's my observations or take on the world and my experience of it.
Very cool. So you put this book out in 2019. What about now? Have you been writing since then?
I write I post a blog every week. So I post generally on Mondays. Since 2010, I've probably posted over 500.
Oh my goodness.
So they cover all range of topics, you might not think of them as really sparking gratitude, but I thought about these things. I wrote a blog about the difference between lemons and limes, or I know before we started recording, you talked about being in an Airbnb that had crushed ice. I actually wrote a blog about the sound my ice maker makes in the freezer, that I was really grateful for that I would have ice automatic at my command. I thought that was fantastic. So I've been writing these little essays. I write one a week. And now I have a writing practice, a journaling practice for myself. I call it Writing with God. So basically I do journaling, but it's not just to clear my head. I sort of write as I'm having a conversation with that part of myself that's not my ego. And that's been wonderful. So I usually end up taking the minutes in a meeting because it's my natural tendency to try to put things in words.
No, it totally makes sense. So you thought though that you were going to go into fiction. Did you ever start down a path with fiction?
Actually, I don't think I went on a path with serious intent to write a novel. I did write another sort of creative nonfiction book years ago. I was a substitute teacher in the Chicago public school system. I wrote this book called Reflections in the Blackboard. It was about how hard it is to be a substitute teacher. And I wrote my experience of doing this. And I was very close to getting an agent back then, but it didn't happen. And I kind of put it away for a while.
When you wrote this book, did you do it did you self-publish or did you?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Because I would certainly like the backing of a bigger house, but I decided I didn't want to wait. I've been writing these things, these blogs for 10 years. And I really felt that I was being called to make a little bit of an investment in myself. I wanted to get out my writing and also my philosophy, which I have a very different approach to gratitude than many people do. That end the day writing 15 things that they were happy about. In my view, that's a positive thing to do that gives you a little bit of a positive orientation, but you're not in control of that. You're not in control of whether you get a good parking place or whether the boy you like calls you back. And I thought gratitude is much more powerful if it's internally directed. If you actually know what makes you feel grateful and know how to practice seeing those things in the world that you are actually living. So my focus is a little bit different, but I really find writing these little pieces a great exercise in mindfulness, a great exercise in writing, because I'm really letting people into my world. And that takes a certain level of skill. I want to be relatable. And I think for the most part I am. And I also want to inspire people maybe to do their own writing practice and have their own writing or own gratitude practice.
So when you started all this, do you have a writer community around you?
I have at different times, but I haven't for most of the time that I've been doing this blog. Years ago, I lived in Madison, Wisconsin, and there was Miriam Hall, who is a very popular writer and a Buddhist teacher of like journaling and writing with prompts and different things. And I've recently joined another community called Soul Circle out of New Jersey that also has writing drop in and write together. So I think those types of things are wonderful, but that wasn't really part of this particular book. I wanted to do that a little more.
Okay. Very well. I got a question on that. So you had a writing community. When you went to publish this, how did you go about that then?
I just I did a little research online to look at self-publishers. And I also talked to friends of mine that were like therapists or consultants and also published a book of their own, either with a small house or self-published, and they asked for recommendations. I think the writing or the publishing industry has changed so much in 20 or 30 years because there are so many ways to get things published, but not necessarily to get a lot of marketing support or backup, because the authors are expected to a large degree to already have a following, because so much can be available online. So it was a little bit, it's been a little bit of a challenge putting some of that together, but I think there's so many wonderful resources online, but I didn't grow up thinking about that. I sort of grew up with an older model of how to get a book out, and I'm kind of like feeling my way out.
Well, no, that makes sense. But so did you use an editor or anything like that when you went to go about doing this?
The particular house I use that does self-publishing is called Gatekeeper Press. They're out of Ohio. And one or two people I know that are therapists published some books with them, and they talked about them that they had a mechanism to supply an editor. And I do know some editors because in Chicago, I was plugged into a community of women journalists, but not necessarily book writers.
Okay.
So I had some other contacts to publishers, but not necessarily one I used a lot. So I did a little research, this particular publisher had some editors, and then I had some people also that would look over what I wrote.
No, that's one way to do it. So what about cover art and things like that? How'd you go about that whole situation?
Well, I've had a blog for a long time, but almost 10 years before I actually took my book to a publisher. And I had artwork. I didn't have a logo, but I had artwork that was pretty much like fitting to me for the concept of the blog. And even though I didn't design the cover art, I was very clear that I wanted to stay with this type of image. And the publisher found another image along the same lines that they could use that wasn't royalty protected or whatever. And that's what happened. So I guess you could see it. So it's a bunch of rocks with a heart-shaped rock in the collection, in the group. And this was actually very similar to what I had as my key image on my blog. And the thought was that there's so many wonderful things that we don't pay attention to in our daily lives. And it's all, being grateful is so much about paying attention to these things. So to me, the idea that there's this heart-shaped rock, which has a lot of meaning to it, is mixed in with these other rocks, and it could go unnoticed, but you have to like practice paying attention to see the beauty in a lot of things. And that's how this kind of came about.
No, that makes sense. Jobs?
So you said you did a blog and now you have your book. Was your writing process different from going from writing in your blog to creating your stories?
Basically, the book is called The Best of No Small Thing. So it's basically that I took 50 entries that were already written, and I cleaned them up a little bit, but they were largely already written over these 10 years of time. So I didn't just write a new book based on the concept. I actually took blogs that were already published and made the collection out of them.
Okay. Do you plan to do like a second series and go back through your blog posts and do another one?
Definitely. I would like to do one every 3 years. I think that would be because I post every week. It would be a good chance to like find good ones. I mean, they're mostly, I'd like to think they're all good, but some are probably better than others to put in a collection. And that's pretty important. I've also thought of one other book that I want to put together, which is about photography and learning about ourselves by contemplating the images we take, whether it's because we like the subject of an image or because we feel something about the person in it or because of the place we show. I think photographs can be a great springboard for contemplation because I think that most stories are about transformation and getting to know yourself better. And that's something I want to promote, whether you're a natural writer or not. Even if you write just to learn more about yourself and to see your thinking process in front of you, I think that's a very valuable tool for everybody.
I have a sort of strange question. When you do this photography book, are you going to talk about selfies and that whole entire situation?
Filters and
yeah.
Maybe. I generally don't like selfies because I have a feeling that like when I go on vacation, I like asking somebody to take a picture of me because it's a chance to have a little interaction, a relationship with somebody where there's nothing vested. There's no pre-existing relationship. And I think it's a nice thing to do for each other. So I'm not like, not thinking about selfies. It's not like it's off limits. That's not my focus. I'll give you one example. A few years ago, I got a new camera and it was near Halloween. And I took a picture that was like enchanted. There was like a pumpkin patch. There was a parking lot of a school taken over by pumpkins for sale and lights out. It was beautiful. But then I took a picture of this and then noticed that the man who ran the concession lived in a trailer that was on site. And on top of the trailer where he lived was a Santa Claus, because this person apparently, after Halloween was over, he sold Christmas trees from the same place. So I took this photograph and I didn't see the Santa Claus. And I think it's really fascinating how little gremlins or other things just show up in the photograph. So I think like things like that are very interesting to contemplate what's actually in a shot that you might be conscious or not conscious of.
No, that's very cool. Okay, we have to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And I do have a photography question. So we'll be right back with Drinking with Authors.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family-owned, brewing small batch grain-to-bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers Spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
Okay, we're back. So we were talking about photographs right before the break. My question for you is, do you, what about orbs and stuff like that in photographs? Do you like ghosts?
Oh, I haven't thought about that. I think it's just fascinating to make the unconscious conscious. I think Jung said that, those exact words. So I think that's part of my interest in writing and part of my gratitude process, to keep like asking myself questions. So until I really uncover what is at the core of why I feel uplifted in a situation, and knowing that the essence of that quality, I can find those things in other situations. So I'm not sure I know how to answer this exactly when it comes to photography, but I think photography coupled with contemplation, whether you write or not, is just a wonderful way to get to know what you might not be conscious of thinking, but is important to you.
That's very, no, that makes sense. Oh my gosh, I just lost my thought. I gotta love this. Okay, you go, Chels. I don't know why my brain just literally stopped. It just stopped. I do know why my brain stopped.
I was about to say your hands on the reason.
Yeah.
So you have your blog, you did a book of your blog post. You're talking about doing a different version every 3 years or so, and you have an idea for a photography book. So out of all of the different things you have mentioned, do you have more than one project up in the air right now, or more than one that you are looking forward to doing?
Well, these are the next collection will sort of happen on its own. In other words, I write every week. I make a blog every week. So even though I haven't picked out what I will use, I have thoughts about how I might put it together. So that's pretty easy and that's ongoing. I've written a couple essays for the photography book, but I'd like to get back to that in earnest. And then I also want to get my classes off the ground. I really would love, especially since people have been freaking out about COVID or about changes, really inspire people to think about what they actually have in their lives. And it's not like forcing yourself or willing yourself to feel good. That doesn't work. It's about really getting to understand yourself better. And so I really am very committed to trying to get more people introduced to this idea of intentional gratitude and how I do these classes. There's another project, a writing project, I'm trying to get off the ground, and that has to do with journaling. I want to kind of, most of my, all my blogs and what I've done is mostly aimed at mass market, but I would like to see journaling take root in corporations. I know that's kind of a big, hard sell sometimes, but there's more opportunities there. It's getting a little bit softer because many people are quitting their job because they don't feel appreciated. People are looking for fulfillment. People kind of realize mindfulness is like a buzzword. And I really think that journaling can be something used for leadership development and in organizations to improve like teamwork. So that's something that I've written some prompts and I have an idea about how I would do this book. So I have a few projects that I'm noodling with.
Are you still teaching?
No, I haven't for years. So I was a substitute teacher many years ago. And for probably 10 plus years, I did a market research back when we didn't do everything by SurveyMonkey or whatever, you know, the computer programs. I did like qualitative market research. I would talk to like client customers and really understand what they liked or didn't like about their supplier. So I did that for money. That was my paying gig for many years. But at the start of COVID, that was, that disappeared. And I have no intention to try to get back into marketing, market research that way. I just hope to be able to really do more with my books and also classes. So I'm not really doing another job now.
That makes sense. Have you thought about re-looking at the book you were originally going to publish and self-publishing it?
I haven't thought about that till just recently. So it's pretty interesting because I think teaching in the Chicago, in an urban school system is difficult. And I think because of COVID, there's also some extra attention to that kind of job. Like people that didn't have to do this before had to like homeschool or whatever, that more people are aware of some of the challenges of being in the classroom. But I haven't thought about it till recently. I think there's some interesting insights from this experience and things they wrote about. So it's worth re-examining. It's kind of difficult because it's like 15 years after I wrote it. I
When
also
did
wrote
you stop teaching?
Many years ago. Like, I only did this for about like a year because it was not really a good way to make money. Like, as a substitute teacher back when I did this in the mid 2000s, it was like $75 a day.
Oh, wow. That's not good. So you were a substitute teacher. Were you ever a teacher? Like a full?
Not a full-time teacher. I enjoy teaching or guiding people, but I didn't want to be a grammar school or high school teacher because I felt that I would be dealing with not necessarily people that were motivated. So one of the jobs I had years ago was I wrote instruction for like sales training or customer service training. So I feel pretty comfortable about designing a workshop and writing about those kind of experiences. But I don't have any children. So I feel more comfortable just talking with adults. And when I did substitute teach, I chose to teach high school because to me, it was easier to deal with teens that had attitudes than open up somebody's juice cup. It was like just something that was so different from my background.
No, that makes sense. What about, so do you think about fiction writing anymore at all?
It hasn't been a key thing. I might like to go back to writing a screenplay.
Oh.
Because I wrote a treatment years ago for somebody who tried to sell this idea of called Running. And it was a businessman from Wisconsin that moved to Canada, but he realized that because he was still an American citizen or he was born here, he could run for president. So I wrote a treatment in several episodes of how to have a reality TV president. And little did we know, this was back in like 2007. Little did we know, I know back then, that we would end up with a reality TV president.
Oh, that's true. Look at you and your predictions. Okay, so you put this book out. How have reviews been for you?
The reviews have been very positive, but it has been challenging to boost sales, partially because I'm not really a natural at social media. I'm doing better at that. One of the things I did about a year ago that was a wonderful experience was I went on a virtual retreat with Jack Canfield, the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And that was, he was very positive about the book and actually wrote a very nice review that appears on Amazon. So actually the interview with him is on my website. So I really think there's potential in this book, and I just have to do a better job to get more people to be familiar with what I do.
No, absolutely. Marketing is definitely a challenging part about being an author and getting your thing out there. So do you read all your reviews?
Yes. I might not read them immediately when they're posted, but I will read them. And I'm having a book tour now. It's really fun to read, read what people say. And I'm like so excited when somebody that does a review thinks about like how they want to take a picture. Like, oh, it's no small thing, mindful meditations. So they put the book near a candle or something to indicate being reflective. Or I'm really like very taken by how much different book bloggers really love reading and love what they're doing and put out so much energy into helping authors get their stuff out. So
absolutely. I think book bloggers and book reviewers, and even, you know, you have beta readers, you have all these people that really support the writing community. And I think people don't always think about those unsung heroes behind the scenes that are doing all these things to help. Are you taking any classes on marketing for your books and stuff like that, or reading about it, or how are you finding out?
At one time, but I'm not currently. Sometimes I'm very leery about some of that. I think authors in general need help on this, but sometimes there's so much available and so many people that want to sell you things. And I'm very cautious or leery about that.
Yeah, no, you should be. There are definitely some groups out there that help. I'll tell you, one of the things I think is great is for authors to find even a group of authors that write similar books to them. You could, you know, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, because that way you really get a community going of authors, which is helpful because they can give you their tips and tricks on how they did certain things or were successful, and you guys can do takeovers of each other's pages or channels or whatever. So I think I always encourage authors to find writing groups, and you kind of just know if it's the right writing group for you or everything. I ignore the spam emails that say they have 30,000 followers and for only $500 they'll spam your book to all of them, because those are always garbage and bullshit. But you can find really great groups that give you ideas, because some people find little tips and tricks that you don't even think of on how to do this better.
That's a great idea.
What have you found?
I need to, you know, it's interesting that being an author or being a writer is mostly a solitary enterprise. Like you just need your computer to like do things. And sometimes you have somebody, a good friend, that will read some things, but it's really wonderful to connect with other people that have some similar challenges and learned, like you said, learned some things that they could share.
Exactly. Sorry, Chelsea, go. Go, Team Chelsea.
What have you found to be your biggest challenge since you have published this book?
Well, marketing is an ongoing challenge for me because I'm trying to get the word out of the book a little more. And I'm just now learning a little bit of Instagram. So it's not intuitive to me. So some of this is still challenging for me. And fortunately, I have like somebody that is helping me now. So I think that's a huge thing. I also think that COVID has made some things a little bit harder because instead of having personal appearances, you do things virtually. And in some ways it's easier because you're not limited by geography, but in some ways it's harder because you're competing against more things that are vying for somebody's attention. And it might be harder to establish a personal relationship. So like I've been kind of delayed in doing personal appearances about some things. And something else that I've been doing that I've had a lot of fun with is podcasts. And it's wonderful that you have like an interview format that's a little different. But I have been enjoying being interviewed and just being in discussion with people about my experience and also what I'm trying to do. Because I sometimes share this. I have been on some podcasts that talk about gratitude in terms of mental health and in terms of my writing career, where I was a writer who wasn't writing. And I did this to overcome depression. And I have a little bit of that background. And somehow just being on these podcasts or being with interviews, doing interviews is like healing for me. It's like a chance to get out what I haven't gotten out yet and talk about what I do and what I envision. And that's been really wonderful.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad. And I'm glad you think we're a little different. People always ask me if there's a script or something. And I'm like, no, we drink too much to be scripted on this show. It's a terrible plan. Even if we had a script, it would go to hell in a handbasket really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about writing during COVID then. Did that change at all for you?
Not necessarily the writing, but I think it feels more important than ever to get what I've learned out into the world. Many people are distraught or confused or depressed because things are changing. They can't do what they used to do for entertainment or how they, or distraction, or how they maintained relationships. So I really want to impress people that you could take more initiative yourself, like to control your mood. It's not based on whether you have a virus or whether you're sick or whatever. It's based on what you know about yourself and your own willingness to practice being positive. It doesn't come easy, but after you get the hang of it, it gets to be easier and easier. And it's not specifically about writing, but it's largely about feeling really that this message, that these examples that I'm providing in my writing can be useful to people to recognize that even while things might not be wonderful, perfect, and I don't want people to deny or camouflage their feelings, but it's really empowering to know that you could have troubles and still find things to be grateful or happy about. And I think not the writing, but the message of what I want to say is really especially important now.
I love that. And with that, I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give authors out there?
To keep at it, to make it discipline. I know it can be hard. I mean, you might just be writing for yourself. For many years, I thought I started thinking that, well, I will develop a following. And that didn't happen right away with my blog. So I carried on and I did this process a lot for myself. And that itself was valuable. And then when I realized I did this for myself and it had value for myself, I would say that to any writer. Do it because you need to do it and honor that impulse, because you might like come back to it and brush things up and make it more suitable for an audience. But the important thing is to get some things out. I've talked to some people that were writers or writing memoir, and I've helped a friend of mine who had cancer write a book of his life for his sons. And I edited it and put some things together. And I realized that even if you just write for somebody in your family, it's wonderful to tell your story to someone else. So I encourage people just to write and not worry about like being the next great thing, you know, on the bestseller list. Just put it out there.
That makes perfect sense. And where do people find your book?
Basically any online retailer like Amazon, Barnes Noble. There's a few others. I know in England, it's sold through Gardner. Basically anybody, a retailer that has online systems, because the books are print on demand. So I don't have like 3,000 in my spare bedroom in boxes.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing, definitely. So they're all print on demand, so they're bought online. So this collection is available in paperback, but also ebook, Kindle, that sort of thing. And then I have a small book that's a workbook of my process that basically has the same picture, but it's all in like half tones. And this is about 100 pages. This is only available in paperback because you could actually write in it. And it's called Practice Gratitude. Transform your life, making the uplifting experience of gratitude intentional.
Very cool. And what is the name of your blog?
The blog is called No Small Thing.
Okay.
Basically, if you go to nosmallthing.net, it used to be only the blog, but now it's a blog and some explanation of my courses and other things are on there. But there's a new post every week, and it's fun for me to keep this up. I invite people to make comments on it, and yeah, I enjoy it.
Very, very cool. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, this has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today has been the amazing C.R. Rice. Our sponsor today has been Skunk Brothers Spirits. And don't forget your coupon code DWA10. And our amazing guest, Deborah Hawkins. And we will see you guys next time.